Hey everybody, what's up? It's me, your friend and lender for life, and I'm here with one of my really good friends, Reynaldo Salter with the Salter Group and National Realty. He is an Army veteran and also a 20-year veteran in real estate, and I brought him out here today to discuss a couple hot topics in real estate. Ray, thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you, bro.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Ray and I met years ago in his tenure of Keller Williams.
Oh yeah.
Was it? Yeah, Keller Williams. And so this guy's an expert. For those of you who don't know him, he's a leader in the business. He closes a lot of deals. He's not a onesie twosie kind of character. So I wanted to ask him some questions. So Ray, let's get right into it.
Sure.
So one of the big things I'm getting asked right now is like, who can afford this market? So I figured I'd go back a little bit and ask you the question, what are the motivators of these sellers? I know you just put some new listings on the market. What are you seeing as a concentration of motivation for sellers in today's market?
What I see is a lot of life events happening for sellers, whether it's death, downsizing, divorce. You know, it's not really money driven anymore, where before in the previous markets, everyone wanted to make as much as possible. I noticed with a lot of sellers, they're moving out of state, and they're just trying to reposition themselves to get ready to, I guess, embrace this new change in the economy.
Right. Obviously, around political instances like an election, we've always historically seen some resistance and some shifting and a little bit of change in the vibe in the market. Would you say we're experiencing that right now?
Definitely. I see a lot more inventory coming to the market right now, which is causing an adjustment with the current list price because there's more competition for sellers.
Right.
And the buyers are having a little bit more options. They're not just, having to decide with what's available.
So they get to take their time, right?
Yeah, but
That's nice.
I think the other thing too is that there's not a lot of buyers that's operating in this market from what we've seen in the previous markets, just because the affordability is so high. It's really hard for buyers to qualify and to step into this mortgage where they feel confident just because of, jobs are changing.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mortgage applications are down to the lowest levels they've been in over 30 years. And this is a true sign of the affordability issues that a lot of buyers are faced with as they step into this market. We did notice, and we do notice, that when people's motivation is high, the motivation of a life event, like Ray mentioned, circumstances surrounding the need to relocate or move for a family, the numbers aren't going to stop everybody, but they do prevent quite a few folks. So we've had quite a bit of people apply, get pre-qualified, and then park themselves right on the sidelines in anticipation of what everybody thinks might be a changing market. I want to know your opinion, Ray. What do you think has to happen for this market to become more affordable for homeowners and buyers in this place?
Well, I think what has to happen is a life-changing event for the U.S. That's what we've seen, whereas a lot of times when we go to war, they'll do things to kind of stimulate the economy, and the economy is driven by the housing market. What is happening, and kind of like what I mentioned earlier, is that with more inventory coming on the market, we are seeing some adjustment in price, but not with what the buyers are actually wanting to see. And I don't think they're going to see that, because in order for that to take place, we're looking at someone's equity or pricing to drop 50 or 100,000. That's just not realistic in today's market.
At least not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah. And I think even then, if that did happen, it's not going to allow the sellers to be really motivated to sell, because at that point it's like, what would be the reason if they're losing a $50,000 to $100,000 on what they would net?
Yeah.
So I think there has to be a healthy balance in the market for each party to get what they want. Buyers in this market just have to be a little bit more realistic with their expectation and what they're going to buy.
100%.
And I think they really have to ask themselves the reason why. What's the real reason why you're trying to purchase a home in today's market? They can't identify that, and it's something that's superficial, where I just feel like, now's the time. There's no real no real driving force, no real integrity behind that desire, then they're not going to make the move. They're just going to sit on the sidelines and hope for things to change. But in order for things to change, there has to be action,
So as a lender, a career lender, I get asked a lot, is now a good time to buy? And my answer usually is, it's all based on what's driving you, right? How would you address buyers that have that concern right now, if now's a good time to buy?
It's always a good time to buy, depending on how you buy. Like even now, for me, I still look at the market and buying investments, just because things are the way that they are doesn't mean that I pull back. You just got to find the right deal based on what it is that is motivating you to go out there and do it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
If a buyer needs a home and they believe in the American dream and they believe in equity and the 30-year plan, that the house will be paid off, the benefit may not necessarily be for them right away. It may be for their kids or their kids' kids. And if they plan on staying in California, which is probably one of the most expensive states out there, you know, next to New York and Florida, then it starts today with that plan, you know. Long term, if they plan on staying, they want their legacy to be here, they need to position themselves in today's housing market.
Right. So if the 3 C's are in the right place, capacity, collateral, the housing, and your credit, those things generally will help you step out of that comfort zone after you've done a discovery and see if that motivation is in alignment with expectation.
Yeah.
And we deal with this a lot where people start looking for homes before they get into their financials, and then they get a rude awakening when they realize that the payments on Zillow were misleading.
Yeah.
And it forces them to, in some cases, retract a little bit of their motivation because they're like, well, crap, I can't live in this area. What's your advice to buyers that are seeing payments that are higher than they want in the areas that they want to be in?
Payments that are higher than they want in areas that they want to be in. You know, what I see is this, and I think buyers have to be very realistic with having good taste, you know, when it comes to being in these areas that they want to be in. These areas are the areas for a reason. You know, they're able to retain a certain value. And if they're willing to make the investment into these areas because of that, the value, the schools or whatever, they have to make the adjustment and buy into these payments. And understand these payments aren't forever. I mean, the way that a mortgage works is, yeah, maybe the first 15 years, your payment, most of your payments is interest driven because the banks front load that. But start getting into that mortgage 15, maybe 10 or 15 years into that mortgage, you'll see you have the opportunity to start paying down that equity. And then other things too will come up where opportunities of refinancing may present itself where interest rates may drop. So, you know, like anything, it's not going to always be good. There has to be some sacrifice, some compromise. And as you get into these areas, you'll see that the sacrifice, the compromise was well worth it because you'll see the appreciation on that investment that you're making, you know. And I would say, you know, stay within your means as a buyer, but also have, you know, a realistic plan on what you want the future to look like and where the economy and the people within the market says that it's headed. You know, you want to be in a comfortable situation. Absolutely. You want to come home and feel like your hard work at the end of the day is well worth it, well received because you're coming to a place that you want to be.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
With this new rule coming out for investors flipping properties, it dawned on me that this may open up some more opportunities for the 203K program. And the 203K program and other renovation programs like that are for end user buyers. And one thing that I love about my experience with Ray is Ray's family home was purchased with the 203K. And I'd like to share a little bit more about that and what the experience was. But I remember when Ray got an escrow on this house, he took me with him to go see the house. And I was like, what in the hell did you find here, bro? Like, I swear, it was definitely rough around the edges. But wow, what you guys have done to that house over the years has been a phenomenal change. That house got the facelift of the century.
Yeah.
So what was your experience with the 203K? And would you recommend it?
I would definitely recommend it. And, you know, we've actually used that program for some of our clients during the REO market just because a lot of times, you know, buyers, they can't always get into the areas that they want. So sometimes they have to find that house that needs work in order to be able to buy into that community. And the 203K is a great product. It allows you to do it. My second purchase was done with that just so I can get familiar with the product. You know, I'm not going to pitch something that I don't necessarily know anything about. And I think, like you said, it was definitely a blessing for me and my family. I think as a agent, you really have to understand the market and see vision when it comes to using that program.
100%.
If not, you could position your clients for a downfall. I mean, that product is a 60-day escrow. I've seen you do it in 45. You know, and I think that's what allowed us to have a lot of freedom using that product over and over for some of our clients.
Absolutely.
But I think too, the other thing is that you have to be realistic. You can't be a buyer that's saying, hey, I want Brazilian countertops and I'm gonna drop 25 grand when the budget is 35,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to really understand this product is to be used in a way that is going to allow you to maximize the true benefit of the house. You know, maybe fixing up the kitchen, the master bathrooms, or or the areas where appraisers look at that give the homes the most value on the return. If you don't do that, then the house won't appraise for where you need it to be in order for that product to work in your favor.
Right, yeah, you got to have that ARV.
Yeah, you got to have the ARV. And I think too, like, the buyer has to understand, like, by getting to that ARV, you're positioning yourself where you're now being able to get equity a lot faster than just depending on the market and the economy with buying and selling, with the comps.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're on a fast track to that.
I would say buyers that are struggling to stay in certain demographics or certain areas would be great beneficiaries of programs like that, where they can look at the ugly house that's in the great neighborhood and what other investors are looking at to try to buy, resell, and flip for profit. You could get in there and compete with the investors.
Oh, certainly.
And outperform their offers. And although the timeline's a little bit longer when you work with seasoned and experienced folks in that space, there's great opportunity there. A lot can be accomplished.
Oh yeah, what I hear you saying, Thomas, is to break it down. Investors have to have a certain margin in order for the flip to make sense. If you're coming in there and you're going to occupy that home as your primary residence, you can beat their margins. You are able to offer a better offer that makes more sense to the person on the other side, seller, bank, whoever that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know Ray yet, Ray, you need to get plugged in with this guy. I wanted to talk to Ray about investing out of state.
Yeah.
He's been a leader in that as we've grown, our families have grown. I've stayed in California with my investments, but I've seen him grow a great out-of-state portfolio. What's some of the advice that you would give people? What would you say is like your top 3 tips for people looking to invest in real estate out of state?
Again, it just comes back down to being very realistic.
Okay.
Understanding the market, the housing market, the economy in that market in terms of jobs, who's going to be your tenant. I started buying, I think I bought my first home when I was like 19, and that was a purchase here in Rancho. But shortly after that, I purchased in Georgia, and at the time that purchase was I think it was like $50,000. I dropped like 13 grand into it to fix it up, and I think the equity went to like 110. And I ended up turning that into a rental. My first tenant, and I was telling you a story earlier, I wasn't mature enough to be able to pick the right tenant. Okay. And instead I picked a tenant who was young, who was a young mom. She was occupied in the house with her sister. The tenant had a day job, right? And then she was a stripper at night. And it just, things didn't line up when it came to that property performing and me getting my rents on time, know? And that was a learning curve for me. As a new investor, you're going to have a learning curve where not everything is going to go according to plan, and you really should seek the advice of a professional, someone that's experienced. And I think that's the biggest thing. When I made that purchase, I learned from my mistakes. It took me a while. I think I didn't revisit the market for like maybe another 5 years after making these investments and going through trial and error. But when I did revisit the market, I was able to move a lot faster, a lot smarter, and understanding that my focus was buying multifamily versus single family. I want to be able to secure that investment by making sure I bought at the right price, right? And I was buying property that was going to be able to give me a solid return because of the way that the numbers were put together. What I didn't anticipate at the time was the growth on rents, and that was because of COVID. COVID really changed our market around. So even though I went into that investment with an idea of a decent return, I think the economy in general positioned me and my family to get a bigger return. And a lot of that had to do with timing. If I was one that was just sitting on the sidelines, just waiting for the perfect buy, it would have never worked out,
How do you figure out the perfect time to buy?
Well, for me, Thomas, I consume a lot of information, whether it be social, podcasts, I read books, and I feel like I'm able to make an educated decision when I have enough information. Mm-hmm. I understand that, there is no reward if you don't take risk, but I put my risk in line with where I'm at, and me being very conservative on my day-to-day, it allows me and my family to have freedoms that other people don't necessarily have.
Yeah, you travel a lot, bro.
We travel a lot.
I love it.
But we have a plan and we set goals and we put them in writing, and then we do what's necessary in order to get to that point and see them through. The number one things I have is I want to give my kids exposure to that world of investing. Even though I was able to invest young, I think had I had that access early on in the game, it probably would allow me to make better decisions. What allowed me to get in the game as young as I was, you know, I'm the youngest of, what is it, like 14 kids. I have like 7 sisters, I think 5 brothers. So I'm like 13, youngest of 13. And one of my sisters, yeah, it's a big family. One of my sisters brought me in the game early on. She was very successful. She retired financially when she was like 45.
Talking about Ruby and Roque?
No, Eloise. Ruby and Roque was also instrumental, but my sister Eloise. Yeah, and Gene Taint, they owned a school in Compton, and they were able to grow that school to like, I think 6 locations from Compton all the way to Santa Barbara.
Nice.
And they brought me in the game and explained to me how real estate worked, right? And they made the suggestion for me to get licensed early on. And so when I did get licensed, you know, my goal was to learn and to really use my youth in the sense that, you know, like at the time I was probably the youngest kid in the office, the youngest person, youngest agent in the office. And so I was able to see that as a benefit because I could do more versus some of these older agents where I think the average age for the agent at the time was like maybe 50, you know, because they had to come out of a career that allowed them to semi-retire, where they had like some income where they can step into a commission-only business. And in me going into this industry, my goal was to get around the heavy hitters and learning as much as I possibly can.
Right.
And that would speed up my growth and allow me to do what I'm doing today. And so I think, you know, by understanding that, it's put me in a position where whatever we come across in this market, it's something that, one, I've already seen, I'm not afraid to approach, and you know, it allows me to have a lot of wisdom and grace and understanding the perspective from all different angles, whether it be the seller, the buyer, the agent on the other side, the buyer's agent. Because I've been in their shoes. I've been in the position where at one point I was the seller, I was a move-up buyer. You know, it just allows you grace. I think sometimes, you know, some of the newer agents don't have that. They base their perspective on what they see on TV. It's all bravado driven, you know, and in that they come into it very blind, and you know they're chasing a dollar, you know, chasing a commission, and versus providing real service, you know, and real counsel, which is needed for most of the people that is making this big decision to purchase a home.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that Ray does, and I get asked this often with my rentals here in California, is he uses out-of-state property managers. The property managers help layer or risk protect you as an owner, and you do need to make sure that when you're pricing in your rents, that you've priced in a budget for property management. If I were to invest out-of-state, I would use a property manager and follow the lead that Ray's done very well at. Here in California, I've used property managers to find my tenants, but because I'm local and I'm able to visit the properties, and I'm extremely picky on the type of people I'll allow to rent my homes, like I can service those on my own, right? But you got to pick and choose your battles. Some people don't want to be the face because it allows you to kind of subtract emotion from it, and it is purely business. So if you have somebody that's maybe experiencing some hardships, it's a contract. My contract with the bank doesn't change. I still got to pay my mortgages. I can't be sensitive to whatever circumstances you may be going through, but we got to follow process. Out of state, I know that you've had to deal with some evictions. I know they're a little different than California.
Oh, very different.
So how different?
Well, California, I believe the eviction process can take 6 months to a year, and you know, if if an investor is not positioned properly, you know, it could hurt their pocketbook. In the states that I invest in, the eviction process could be 35, maybe 45 days. Yeah, so it's a lot faster. But then too, like with the properties and the markets I invest in, I make sure that I have a reserve, because as I continue to invest, a reserve needs to be met in order to qualify for future purchases.
Absolutely.
So I think understanding, you know, the process, the loan process, is important. But yeah, I mean, property managers, it just allows for a lot more flexibility within the day-to-day schedule, because there's a big time difference, you know, and if I want to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning just so I could be, you know, available at 8 o'clock their time, you know, I'm doing a disservice to myself and my family. So I think, you know, property manager is the way to go.
Way to go. That's what's up. So Ray also spent some time. I appreciate your service, brother. He's an Army veteran. He's also had the benefit of using his VA loan. And there's some things that we like to talk about to the veterans, because I think there's a misconception in the marketplace as to whether or not the VA loan is the right product And from what I understand and from what I hear, there's a lot of resistance from a listing side to accept a VA buyer over an FHA or a conventional buyer.
Yeah.
Why is that, Ray?
Just because the VA doesn't have the requirements to offer collateral, and that collateral is the good faith deposit. They're able to purchase a home with no down payment, and a lot of times that no closing cost comes on, the back or the burden of that seller offering a credit to that buyer.
Right.
I think the other concern too is the condition of the home. VA has higher demand or requirements that the house needs to meet than FHA, even though they're both government loans. The VA turnaround process for an appraisal is a bit longer. And
10 days. Up to
yeah,
10 days.
And it's just like sometimes that can be very stressful, especially if you don't really understand that market.
Yeah.
So.
But I would like to say that there's really not too much of a difference in the overall process of the loan itself. I do know that the VA structures and orders the appraisals for us, and they help with the facilitation there. But as far as closing a VA loan from start to finish, it can be done in the exact same timelines as a conventional or an FHA deal.
Yeah.
But there are some things with the VA that you cannot waive, like the termite inspection.
Yeah.
Cannot waive it. You have to do all sections, not just section 1.
Yeah.
So that's one of the disadvantages if you are competing against multiple buyers with the VA loan, is that some of those condition requirements, they're non-negotiable. And so if you're a seller on the market and you're looking at a VA offer, just know that you're going to have full termite clearance, all schedules. Where with FHA, termite inspection can be asked for, and if it's in the contract, the lender needs it. But a buyer can do a waiver and pull that from the agreement. So a buyer can buy a property with an FHA loan that has knowingly some termite repairs or damage that needs to be addressed without it being a condition of closing.
Yeah.
A lot of people come to the market with the VA and they think 100% financing. Ray kind of touched on it here a moment ago. That's really difficult, and it does require two different sides to participate. And in this market, while rates are high, it's falling on the shoulders of the sellers to afford the expense of the credit needed to cover that out. So most veteran buyers don't actually get a full zero down scenario. But we've had a couple recently where we combined affordable housing loans, down payment assistance with the VA loan to create that and take some of the weight off the shoulders of the sellers.
Yeah.
And that was really cool, getting to experience that together. Mm-hmm. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about the market and give you guys some insight on some of the things that we see are important. I tell people, man, if we had the magic crystal ball, we wouldn't be sitting here in this office. We'd be on a beach in probably the Bahamas or something, trying to do a podcast out there to put information out there. There is really no magic formula as when it's the right time to buy a property. It's when it's right for you. When you're confident in your job, when you're stable with your credit, when you've got the capacity, and when you feel the need is there. And a lot of people are comparing their rents right now to what these mortgage payments look like. And one of the things that they're overlooking are the immense tax benefits that come from ownership. And while higher interest rates are a deterrent because the payment's higher, they also offer a larger tax deduction at the end of the year, as the interest on your loan is the largest tax benefit you get as a homeowner.
Yeah, but I think you have to spell that out, Thomas, because a lot of times people don't understand, like, how does it actually work,
Yeah.
So, like, if we're looking at someone stepping into a purchase, let's say, $500,000, right? Mm-hmm. And they have a mortgage payment of $45,000 or $5,000 a month, right?
It's about $4,000 right now.
$4,000, okay. Yep. How much of that is interest, and how much that applies to their taxes at the end of the year based on their income?
Well, as you touched on earlier, the interest is front-loaded. So the first few years, about first 5 years of the loan, you're paying mostly interest.
Yeah.
It takes a little while to get ahead, start paying into that principal. And as you get to the tail end of the loan process, the interest becomes less, but your balance in equity becomes more. A good chunk of your payment, so the property taxes up to $7,000, the insurance on the property, and predominantly the interest on a $400,000 or $500,000 purchase, you're probably getting about $18,000 to $22,000 of tax deductible interest in that calendar year. And that's going to vary depending on the type of rate you have and so on. Mortgage insurance is still not tax deductible, although I believe it should be. And maybe there's going to be some changes here with the new administration that might help open that up and create bigger tax benefits for the homeowners. But it is definitely beneficial to your bottom line financially,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to offset some of those taxes that you're paying,
Yeah.
you know?
Definitely. All right. Well, Thomas, I have a question for you. Since you've been in the game for some time, you've seen these markets come and go, high and low. What have you seen with applicants or homeowners doing refinances where sometimes they'll refi and do a cash out to pull that money out, or refi rate and term? What do you see them doing with that cash when they pull it out, or what do you see as the benefit when they do rate and term, and how that affects the the overall approach of them being a homeowner and everything else?
Good question. Thank you for asking. Well, I'm a big believer in fixed rate strategies. I don't like to gamble with my investments. I want to make sure that my ecosystem financially is secure. I think a lot of people looking at a 30-year fixed mortgage at $4,000, $5,000 a month think, damn, this is a lifetime payment.
Yeah.
And that's actually not true. The average homeowner refinances every 3 to 5 years
Okay.
out of a fixed rate loan and tentatively into another fixed rate loan. And it's for one of the two benefits. One is to access equity, maybe to do some home improvements, some expansion or debt consolidation. And then the other is just to take advantage of a changing market and get lower interest rates, lower monthly payments. Significant benefits that you don't have as a renter when it comes to refinancing. If you structure your refinance correctly, you could skip as many as 2 payments on your mortgage.
Wow.
And so that's really helpful. You get a nice break in the middle of the year, which helps offset the cost and the change to your loan amount when doing something like that. But truthfully, you're just looking for benefit. What is the benefit? What is your motivation? Sadly, throughout the tenure of me as a lender, I've encountered a lot of people that tap into their equity to pay off debt. And then what happens is they end up getting right back in to debt.
Okay.
And so it really comes back to like financial literacy and understanding that your home is not a piggy bank to bail you out of poor financial choices every time you get there.
Right.
But we have seen it time and time again
Yeah.
where people have pulled money out and then they've paid off debt and then they go and buy a new car and add that debt right back to their plate. And that's where it could be a little bit unhealthy. It's kind of a toxic relationship. But nobody, I would say, with very few exceptions, keep the same loan they got when they bought for the lifetime of ownership with the home.
Okay. Wow. Well, hey,
How many times have you refinanced, Ray, since we got you in that house?
gosh, I think what we did because we used the 203K, which does come with a higher interest rate. I think what is it? We did a streamline to capture a lower interest rate, right? And then what was it? Maybe after 8 years.
That rate and term.
Yeah, we did another. I think when the rates were in the 2s or the 3s, we refinanced and dropped it down to that. And I think what we saw, my wife and I, we studied the market. We saw that, hey, things are getting more expensive, and why not secure a lower monthly payment and position yourself for the changes in the economy? And we did that with you, and I'm glad we did, because we have we got a payment that, man, most can't even imagine in today's market. If that house was to ever turn into an investment, I think we're guaranteed a decent return if we were to rent it out.
Some high cash flow.
Yeah.
So it's important for you guys to know, if you are sizing up the market and you're thinking, you know what, like my family has a need, our motivation is there, we are tired of renting. For those of you who are renting, don't look at a 30-year fixed payment as a forever ball and chain, because the goal is, and as long as you're disciplined with your finances and you learn through your experience, to get that payment down over time.
Yeah.
It's a gradual process. So a lot of times people think, well, I don't want to start all over. And I got to tell them, you're not necessarily starting all over. Just because the term extends out over 30 years doesn't mean you've got to make a minimum payment on that loan.
Yeah.
And you could choose to reapply some of that savings that you have towards principal every single month to get yourself out of debt. And so I teach clients of mine one very simple strategy that doesn't break the bank, and it is paying early on your accounts. Every mortgage has a payment due date of the first of the month with a grace period of 2 weeks. And I can't tell you the amount of families and individuals I know that wait till the 15th day to send in their payment.
Yeah.
To try to avoid a $70 or $150 late fee. But what they're doing is they're allowing the interest to accumulate longer term between cycles.
Right.
If you could structure your finances to pay early, in my own personal finances, I pay my mortgages 10 days early. My mortgages get paid on the 20th rather than the 1st. This allows me to create a financial safety net, if you will. If for some reason one of my renters is struggling getting me the rent and they're a few days behind, they're still ahead of the first.
Yeah.
Because my renters pay me their rent the same time that I pay my mortgage, 10 days early.
Yeah.
So you got to set up the structure, you got to set the expectations, and as long as you know what your strategy is, what your long game strategy is, the benefits of home ownership can't be watered down by higher interest rates. They're still there, right?
Right.
Homes are still selling. How many of the homes that you've sold in the last 8 months to a year have sold to buyers with financing?
All of them.
Every single one?
Yeah.
Any cash buyers in there?
No.
Little bit? None? Big down payments, little down payments, combination of the two?
Yeah, combination of the two. Some are move-up buyers, so they're selling one house and rolling that equity over. And I think that's wise because sometimes, depending on the neighborhood and the market, the equity will only go so far.
Yeah.
They'll tap out and that's it. Yeah. So for them to transfer that and step into a market that allows that money to grow even more, that's great. But we've also had some first-time home buyers with the bare minimum 3.5% down, which is,
Or the down payment assistance we love.
Yeah, down payment assistance. I mean, at the end of the day, they're able to get in the home, and that's what matters. I think
Plant the seed.
Yeah, because we've seen it time and time again in the past where someone will say, "No, I'm gonna wait and save my money." Well, the reality is this: do you have enough discipline? Let's say if a mortgage payment is $5,000 a month in today's market, do you have enough discipline to put $5,000 away and what is that, $60,000 at the end of the year? Do you have enough to do that 2, 3, 5 years? Probably not. And even then, like with what you do save, is that money going to grow as fast as what it would do in our market with home purchases and the prices rising, appreciation, equity? Probably not. Banks aren't giving big returns on the money that you put in the bank. If anything, they're just lending that out to someone else and getting a return.
Bigger ROI.
Yeah. So I think buyers have to have an understanding, a perspective, where it's like, this home purchase is a real investment, not just for today, but also the future. And in that, when they approach the market, they have to understand what their money is going to allow them to get,
Absolutely.
There is room to negotiate depending on what market you're in. One thing I tell my buyers is to look at the days on market for the homes that I'm sending or the homes that you're sending me. If it has high days on market, then it's overpriced. The agent didn't do their job, and the seller is suffering because of it. And so there's room to negotiate. Whereas, homes that show up well and that are priced right, they sell fast.
Yeah.
And if anything, the seller is in a position to win. I'm sure you saw with our last client, they purchased in 2015, great price, recently sold, moved to Texas. Home sold in a matter of days, and they were able to get like an extra $30,000 or $40,000 on
Over asking.
Yeah, over asking, which is amazing in this market.
Yeah.
How many times do you hear that? So who you choose to service you matters.
And understanding that, sometimes I have clients that are selling and buying, and they'll come to me to kind of just get a little bit of advice behind the scenes. And my advice to sellers is always make your house the best price house in the market.
Oh, yeah.
Because it gets more eyes on it. Just because you set your price tag low in a market that's negotiable doesn't mean that's where you're willing to settle. It's about strategy.
Yeah.
And so I've told buyers, and we got a client right now just like that. They didn't want to list it low. You said, hey, no, come in here. And sure enough, boom, got the offer they were looking for at the price they wanted.
Yeah.
Because the buyer saw, crap, there's a bunch of people looking at this house.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't going to sit.
Yeah.
And that house went into escrow within like a week of being on the market.
Oh, yeah.
Versus sitting stagnant like a lot of these things that we're seeing. I got a deal right now where the property's been on the market for 6 months. I'm not kidding, 6 months. And the list price is $600,000. My buyer's in escrow right now at $570 with a $10,000 credit.
Yeah.
That's $40K under the mark for the seller. And that's exactly what created that opportunity. The house was on the market for a long period of time. The seller's vulnerable. So come in low and see what they say. So they originally went in at I think it was $560 with $10K back. Seller said, we'll do $560, no $10K. I explained to the buyers the critical benefit of, rather than getting a price reduction, asking for the seller credit.
Yeah.
Because it saved them a tremendous amount of money. You see, if you take $20,000 off a sales price and you're financing the bulk of that purchase, it's going to save you about $140 per month to $150 per month in your payment. And let's just use an FHA example. 3.5% of $10,000 is $350. So you're going to save $700 out of pocket. Or you could get a $20,000 seller credit and save $20,000.
Yeah.
and utilize the money that you're saving to get rid of bad debt or to finish the house better, do some upgrades or refinishes. So I made sure that the buyers understand the importance of the credit. So instead of accepting the lower price, which they were excited about, they countered back.
Yeah.
And they said, we'll go up, but we want that in a credit.
Yeah.
And the sellers took it. So understanding how to negotiate those credits is extremely critical in the financial outcome for all the buyers. But I wanted to tell you guys something based on the feedback Ray just gave us. There are some stats floating around the market that anywhere from 25 to 35% of the sales occurring in this market are to cash buyers. And right here, if you look up Ray's history, they got a lot of sales. He's here to tell you that not everyone sold to cash buyers. In fact, all of his listings sold to finance buyers.
Yeah.
So financing and higher interest rates are not stopping the market. It's just slowing it down.
Slowing it down.
Slowing it down.
Yeah.
And being a little slower, allowing buyers some flexibility and time to think about it, gives us a better feeling as professionals that they're not rushing the decision.
Yeah.
Although, you know, obviously we want people to buy today, right?
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that there's not a buyer remorse or a feeling of regret after they close escrow, like a lot of buyers had in that 2020 to 2022 run, where literally you would blink and the house was pending.
Yeah.
And not only was it pending, but it was pending like 40, 50,000 over asking price, and buyers were being asked to remove layers of protection that as an industry we should have done more to protect.
Yeah.
It does not make sense for a buyer to walk into escrow with no contingencies,
Yeah.
right? No appraisal, no loan, no inspections. But buyers had to do that. Not everybody, but buyers had to do that. There were certain contingencies you could keep, but if you were really trying to stand out in the pile, you had to get really risky and bold with it. A lot of those people are sitting in the 2s and the 3% on their interest rates, and they're loving their position right now.
Yeah.
They're kind of equity locked. We have a lot of sellers that are feeling trapped by their 2s and their 3%. What is your advice to somebody that's sitting at 2.5%, 3% on their rate, that have outgrown their home and they need to move, but they're like, I'm not doing it till the rates fall? What are you seeing for the market when the rates come down?
When the rates come down, we know, and we've seen this time and time again with history, rates come down, more buyers are going to come to the market and participate. If there's more buyers, then that means there's more competition. And with competition, price goes up. That's how the game of negotiation works. To answer your question regarding the sellers that are feeling trapped because they got such a great interest rate, you know, the way I see it is when I sit down with the buyer and seller, I'm trying to understand where they're at and really speak to them in a place where they're able to take it all in. And sometimes that's hard because they have an emotional attachment to the home, or they have the emotional attachment to the rate. And so a seller or a buyer has to be in the mindset that they are ready to let go and start something new before they approach the market. If not, it's going to be very complicated. They're going to be very indecisive in a lot of the decisions that they have to make along the process, along the way. And it's not going to leave a good taste in their mouth. They're going to be really, really tired if it doesn't work out the first time, where, you know, a deal cancels and you have to go back to the market. You touched on this earlier when we were talking about buyers and the benefit and how to negotiate credit versus price reduction. I think a lot of listing agents also have to sit down with sellers on the listing appointment and have them understand, like, if we approach the market where I could sell your homes within a matter of like 2 days or a week just because we priced it right, buyers buy with their eyes, we advertised it right. What we're doing is not just saving you money or making you more money on the sale, but we're also saving you money on the amount of mortgage payments you have to make going forward after you fully committed to putting the house in the market to sell.
Yeah.
You know, if the house is on the market for, let's say, 120 days or 6 months, what have you, that seller's still making that mortgage payment, you know? So their net is less. They're still spending money for an asset that they've already decided to let go, you know? So it only benefits them to price it right from the beginning versus let the market, you know, position themselves where they're chasing the market versus letting the market chase them.
Yeah.
You know.
As more homes come to the market, do you see more pressure on price?
Yeah, more homes come to the market, price is going to come down. because there's more competition for those sellers.
The sellers, right?
Yeah,
Right now we're kind of flipping a little bit, would you say?
Yeah, and like when someone's, fully committed to their house, they make that investment to make it a 10 for themselves. They add these features and benefits that give the home character. And we've seen it time and time again where those houses that come on the market, if they're priced right, they sell fast. And it's a lot harder for these buyers to kind of, I don't know, I guess I would say compete at times when, they're limited to what they can do. I think sometimes the buyer has to focus on the area and then just overall like the deal in itself. Are they coming to the market where they need help? They need closing costs, or they want to position themselves for a rate buy down and they're kind of tapped out with the programs. At that point, they should look for a house that's been sitting for some time that still fits, what they're looking for in terms of size and square feet or maybe even the neighborhood and location. But they have to have the ability to commit and not be indecisive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So one thing that we want to touch on, and we're going to wrap this up for today, we get a lot of people that want to move and they want to sell a home, but they're afraid because they don't want to be displaced. They're like, I don't know where I'm going to go in between time.
Yeah.
And Ray and I have successfully done what are referred to as contingent sales time and time again in our career. And I want you guys to know, sellers that are on the fence, that if you're concerned about being displaced, you need an agent that is familiar with the contingent sales and how to properly negotiate the terms on those sales. So Ray can co-sign this for you. There doesn't need to be any displacement. You do not need to move from one home to a temporary residence and then into the home that you're buying, unless that's how you want it to play out. In some instances, you can even sell your home and agree to a rent back while you address whatever things you needed to do to prepare yourself for the replacement property.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that people in the marketplace know that if you're feeling like that, you need to talk to somebody like Ray and myself about how to successfully move through a contingent sale process.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think sellers, even buyers in today's market, you have to really put in the effort to vet who you're going to have represent you, see what their sales experience look like. A lot of times, and I've run into it where a family member will be newly licensed and that's the person that they go with. They don't really understand how that can impact them in a transaction. They don't have enough experience to understand what to do at certain times of the transaction where it gets tough. And sometimes, 100%. Buyers and sellers will lose. They will, cancel an escrow. A seller will cancel an escrow and really have no true benefit or gain from it. Whereas, we've positioned our sellers to walk away with the buyer's good faith deposit. That's what it's there for. It's the consideration just in case the buyer or the lender doesn't perform.
Hold people accountable.
Yeah, exactly.
Vet the pro.
Vet the pro. Look them up on the DRE website to see if they have had any disciplinary action against their license. That's number one. There's a lot of agents out here that you see that they lose their license just because they're not doing good business.
Right.
Or they'll be doing business and not necessarily be licensed.
Right.
So you have to do your homework. Yeah,
and reviews and stuff like that, getting that customer feedback.
Yeah.
As Ray and I begin to put this series together, we want to make sure that we're out there addressing the concerns of the community. So if you guys have any interest in certain topics being discussed that are relevant to real estate, investing out of state, mortgages, what have you, reach out to us, send us a message. We'd love to address some of the questions that you have. And we thank you for the time you spent watching this episode with us.
Oh, yeah.